The sensory displacement. The emerald gates of Pataliputra.
You've been displaced. The cool, white marble of Cordoba and the dry dust of the steppe are gone. You open your eyes in the year 350 AD, during the height of the Gupta Empire, the golden age of India. You are standing on a massive stone pier at the edge of the Ganges River. In the 21st century, you know this river as a symbol of faith and pollution. In 350 AD, it is a vast silver highway of trade and spirit. Its waters clean enough to reflect the burning orange of the setting sun. The first thing that hits your sleeper senses is the absolute sensory overload. This is not the silence of Sparta. The air is thick, humid, and heavy with 1,000 competing smells. Sandalwood incense, crushed turmeric, drying fish, and the sweet, cloying scent of jasmine flowers. You hear the rhythmic thump-thump of wooden mallets from the cloth dyers and the constant melodic chanting of Sanskrit verses from a nearby temple. You see people dressed in vibrant silks of indigo, madder red, and saffron. But as a man of the 21st century, you look past the beauty. You see a city of 500,000 people, Pataliputra, built with a level of urban planning that would shock a modern architect. The streets are laid out in a grid, and there are public hospitals every few blocks. You are in the medical capital of the ancient world. You are a sleeper, and you have just entered a civilization that treats the human body not as a machine, but as a sacred vessel of chemical and spiritual energy. You realize that your biophysics background is about to meet its ancestors.
The biological logic. Ayurveda versus biochemistry.
In the simulation, your 21st century metabolism faces a unique challenge. The food here is a complex matrix of spices and grains. You're offered a bowl of khichdi, rice and lentils, and a cup of warm, golden milk infused with turmeric and honey. To the locals, this is Ayurveda, the science of life. To you, the sleeper, this is a biochemical shield. You use your nutritional physiology protocol to analyze the meal. You recognize the curcumin in the turmeric as a powerful anti-inflammatory agent. You understand that the mix of rice and lentils creates a complete amino acid profile, just like the Aztec Three Sisters, but refined with 1,000 years of culinary science. You realize that the golden milk is effectively a primitive immune booster, but you see a problem. The local doctors believe in the balance of the three dashas, Vata, Pitta, Kapha. While their treatments often work, they don't understand the mechanism of action. You meet a group of students from the University of Nalanda. They are debating the cause of a local fever. You step in. You don't use 21st century jargon. You use their language to explain biochemical logic. You show them that the heat in the body isn't just an abstract energy, but a result of metabolic rate and cellular oxidation. You introduce the concept of hydration and electrolyte balance. You show them how to create a simple life salt solution, oral rehydration salts, using clean water, sea salt, and unrefined sugar. In the 21st century, this is a basic medical tip. In 350 AD, you're just giving them the weapon to defeat the Ganges fever, cholera/dysentery. You are the sage of the molecule, and the students look at you as if you are the reincarnation of Dhanvantari, the god of medicine.
The surgical protocol. The sharp edge of Sushruta.
As your reputation grows, you are taken to a specialized ward in the Royal Hospital. You see a man whose nose has been cut off, a common punishment for crimes or a result of war. In history, This is where Sushruta, the father of surgery, performed the world's first rhinoplasty plastic surgery. You stand next to the chief surgeon. He is using a leaf to measure the area of the missing nose and is preparing to cut a flap of skin from the man's forehead. To the ancient world, this is a miracle. To you, it is tissue engineering. You activate your surgical and biophysics protocol. You see the flaw in their technique, pain and infection control. You introduce the sleeper's anesthetic. You don't have modern gases, but you have your knowledge of alkaloids. You show the surgeons how to refine the fumes of burning cannabis and datura and combine them with deep breathing techniques to put the patient into a state of controlled unconsciousness. You have just introduced general anesthesia 1,500 years early. During the surgery, you guide the surgeon's hand using your knowledge of microanatomy. You show him how to preserve the pedicle, the bridge of skin that keeps the blood flowing to the new nose. You explain the importance of the capillary bed without using the words. You introduce the use of antiseptic honey and turmeric paste to seal the wound, knowing their natural antibacterial properties will prevent the demon of rot, sepsis. When the surgery is over, the man has a new nose, and more importantly, he is alive and awake. The chief surgeon bows to you. You have just taken the foundation of ancient Indian surgery and reinforced it with 21st century physiological precision. You are the architect of the flesh. And as you look at the patients in the ward, you realize that your medical notes from the future are the sutras of a new age. You are the sleeper, and you are about to turn the golden age of India into a diamond age of science.
The University of Infinity, Dharmaganja and the Data of the Gods.
The year is 360 A.D. You have traveled hundreds of miles across the fertile plains of the Magadha region. You are standing before the gates of Nalanda. In your 21st century memory, you think of universities as places of steel and glass, but Nalanda is a living, breathing mountain of red brick. In this era, it is the only place on earth where 10,000 students and 2,000 master teachers gather to solve the puzzles of existence. The first thing that hits your sleeper senses is the hum of collective intelligence. It isn't a silent place. It vibrates with the sound of thousands of voices debating logic, medicine, and the stars. The air is heavy, smelling of drying palm leaves, turmeric-infused ink, and sandalwood dust. You see 3 massive buildings that dominate the skyline, the Dharmaganja, the Treasury of Truth. These are the libraries, housing millions of manuscripts on every subject known to man. But as a man from 2026 New York, you see the systemic fragility. The information is stored on palm leaves, which are beautiful but temporary. They rot in the humidity. They attract insects, and they're easily lost in the massive, unorganized piles. This is where you activate your data architecture protocol. You meet the head librarian, a monk who has memorized the location of thousands of scrolls. He is a human hard drive reaching his capacity. You don't give him a computer. You give him algorithm logic. You show the librarians how to organize knowledge using a hierarchical indexing system, a tree of categories where every branch leads to a specific subject. You introduce the concept of metadata tags for every manuscript, allowing a student to find a specific medical study on blood flow in minutes instead of days. You have just increased the processing speed of the world's greatest university. You are the chief data officer of the Gupta Empire, and you realize that by organizing their thoughts, you are making their wisdom immortal.
The Invention of Nothing, the Biophysics of Zero.
You are invited into the Hall of Mathematics. You see scholars working with sand tables, drawing the early symbols of what will become the world's numbers. They are standing on the edge of the greatest discovery in human history, Sunya Zero. To the ancient world, nothing is just a philosophical idea. To you, the sleeper, zero is the ultimate data compressor. You sit with the mathematicians and use your information theory logic to explain why zero is not just a void, but a powerful operator. You show them that with a symbol for nothing and the concept of position, they can represent any number in the universe with only 10 symbols. You explain the binary logic that runs your world back in NYC. You show them that everything in the universe, from the stars to the human heart, can be encoded in a system of presence and absence, the one and the zero. To make them understand the power of this, you use your biophysics background. You explain the concept of entropy, the natural tendency of information to get messy and lost. You show them that a mathematical system with a zero is more efficient because it reduces the noise in calculations. You explain that by using zero, they are making their mathematical language more certain and more powerful. The scholars are stunned. They see zero not as a hole in the universe, but as a force of nature. You have just accelerated the birth of modern logic and calculus by 1,000 years. You are the sage of the binary pulse. And as you watch them draw the first circles of nothing in the sand, you realize you've given humanity the key to the stars.
The neurophysiology of the mantra. Harmonic memory.
The library is vast, but the most important information in Nalanda is stored in the human brain. The Vedic tradition is oral. Students memorize thousands of pages of text using specific rhythms and tones. You watch a group of students reciting an ancient medical text for hours. You activate your neurophysiology and acoustics protocol. You notice that the students are inadvertently using brainwave synchronization. The specific resonance of the Sanskrit vowels is creating a state of hyperlearning in their minds. You use your 2026 understanding of the hippocampus and memory consolidation to help them. You introduce the sleeper's resonance. You show the teachers how to adjust the pitch of the chanting to match the natural frequency of the human skull. You explain that sound is a physical pressure wave that affects the biochemistry of the neuron. By optimizing the harmonic overtones of the mantras, you allow the students to memorize complex formulas with much less effort. You have turned the human brain into a more efficient storage device. You also introduce the concept of space repetition. Using your understanding of the forgetting curve, you show the student how to review information at specific time intervals to move it from short-term chemical memory to long-term structural memory. You are the architect of the synapse, and you realize that in Nalanda, the software knowledge is finally catching up to the hardware of the human brain.
The biochemical ink. The shield against entropy.
As the sun sets over the monasteries, you return to the library. You see scribes struggling with ink that fades under the intense Indian sun, and palm leaves being eaten by insects. This is a biological crisis of information. If the ink fades, the zero you just taught them will disappear forever. You activate your biochemistry protocol. You don't use modern chemicals, but you use the alchemy of the Gupta era. You show the scribes how to create a sleeper's ink, a mixture of iron salts, charcoal, and a specific resin from the neem tree. You know from your 2026 studies that this resin contains powerful natural insecticides. By mixing this into the ink, The books themselves become toxic to the beetles and silverfish that eat knowledge. You also show them how to treat the palm leaves with a biochemical buffer made from lemongrass oil and lime, neutralizing the natural acids that make the leaves brittle over time. You are using organic chemistry to build a biological firewall around the library. You see the scribes looking at their new, deep black, insect-resistant scrolls with wonder. You have just ensured that the sunya and the surgical techniques you taught will survive for 2,000 years. You sit in the quiet of the library, watching the moonlight reflect off the thousands of protected scrolls. You feel a deep sense of sleeper's pride. You have taken the information of the future and used it to protect the wisdom of the past. You are the guardian of the logic, and as the monks finish their final chant of the evening, you realize you haven't just built a library. You have built a bridge of data that will never break.
The Forge of the Immortals. The Iron Pillar Protocol.
The year is 375 AD. You have left the quiet, scully halls of Nalanda and traveled to the imperial foundries near the city that will one day be Delhi. In your 2026 life in NYC, you know the Iron Pillar as a historical anomaly that refuses to rust even after 1,600 years of exposure to the elements. In 375 AD, you are the one standing over the glowing crucibles, watching the sleeper's metallurgy take shape in the physical world. The air here is a physical weight, a thick curtain of heat that smells of sulfur, burning charcoal, and molten Oregon. You see hundreds of workers, their skin glistening with sweat in the orange glow, pumping giant bellows made of buffalo hide to force oxygen into the primitive furnaces. To the ancient world, iron is a stubborn, temperamental metal. It rusts, it snaps under pressure, and it is incredibly difficult to purify. You activate your materials science protocol. You don't need a computer to know that the secret to the pillar's immortality isn't a spell. It is phosphorus management and surface passivation. You notice the master smiths are trying to purify the iron by removing every single impurity. You stop them. You use your 2026 understanding of chemical corrosion. You show them how to leave a specific amount of phosphorus, naturally found in the local or inside the mix. You explain that this impurity will actually act as a biological agent for the metal, instead of letting the iron react with the humid monsoon air to create rust. The phosphorus will react to form a thin, invisible, and incredibly dense layer of protective film. In the 21st century, we call this a self-healing material. You show them how to seal the pillar by heating it and cooling it at specific intervals, forcing the protective skin to bond with the iron. You are creating a monument that will outlast every skyscraper in Manhattan. You are the master of the rustless bond. And as you watch the massive pillar being forged, you realize you are building a physical bridge through time that your future self will eventually read about in a textbook.
The Damascus Secret. The Nano-Edge of the Wootz Blade.
While the pillar is a message to the gods, the Gupta army needs something more practical. The Wootz Blade. This is a legendary Damascus steel. A metal so sharp it can slice a silk scarf falling through the air, yet so flexible it can bend into a circle without snapping. In your history books, the secret of this steel was lost for centuries. But you, the sleeper, have the biochemical and thermodynamic key to its creation. You watch the smiths making small cakes of steel in clay crucibles. They are guessing the carbon content by the color of the flame and the smell of the smoke. You activate your carbon management protocol. You introduce a revolutionary technique. control carburization using organic matter. You show them how to pack the crucibles with specific green leaves and charred wood before sealing them. You explain that the life in the leaves is what will give the soul to the steel. You are effectively teaching nanotechnology using only clay, fire, and leaves. You show them how to cool the crucibles at a very specific, slow rate. This allows the carbon to form microscopic nanotubes of hard iron carbide within the softer iron matrix. It is a biological structure for a non-biological object. Then, you introduce the quenching protocol. You show them how to temper the blades not just in water, but in specific oils and salts to manage the thermal shock. The result is a blade with a watery pattern, the mark of true woods. These swords are 500 years ahead of anything in the Roman Empire or the Middle East. You just turn the Gupta infantry into a force that can slice through bronze shields as if they were made of dried mud. You are the engineer of the edge, and as the first finished blade rings with a clear, musical note in the morning air, you feel the sleeper's chill. You have given them a weapon of absolute precision, a tool of destruction that carries the DNA of a 21st century laboratory.
The metallurgical sink, the armor of the sun.
With the iron pillar and the wood's blades mastered, you turn your attention to the defensive synthesis. The Gupta warriors wear heavy cotton and leather, but against the composite bows of the northern tribes, they need something better. You introduce the laminated plate protocol. Using your understanding of force distribution, you show the armorers how to forge thin plates of the high phosphorus iron and stitch them between layers of treated silk and leather. You explain that the silk acts as a tensile buffer, catching the tip of an arrow, while the iron plate provides the structural resistance. It is the 4th century version of Kevlar and ceramic armor. You are no longer just a doctor or a scholar. You are the architect of survival. You see the army of the Gupta Empire transforming into a synchronized armor machine. Every piece of equipment, from the tip of the spear to the hinge of the helmet, now carries the sleeper's signature. You have used the most basic elements of the earth, iron, carbon, and phosphorus, and organized them with the logic of a man who has seen inside of an atom. You sit by the dying embers of the forge as the sun sets over the Ganges, feeling the weight of the future on your shoulders. You have made the empire invincible, but in doing so, you have ensured that the golden age will be paid for in the steel you created.
The observatory of the infinite, the optical alignment.
The year is 385 A.D. The Gupta Emperor has commissioned a great observatory to map the movements of the planets, and you are standing on a massive stone platform under the deep velvet purple sky of central India. In your life back in New York, you are used to the heavy light pollution of the city, where seeing even a single star is a luxury. Here, in the heart of the 4th century, the Milky Way is so bright it literally casts a shadow on the white stone beneath your feet. The royal astronomers are using shadow sticks and primitive sighting tubes made of hollow bamboo. They are incredibly accurate for their time, but they are struggling with a ghost, atmospheric refraction. They see a planet where it was not where it is, because the thick, humid air of the Ganges Valley bends a light like a lens. You activate your optical physics protocol. You don't have glass lenses yet, but you have your 2026 understanding of geometry and light behavior. You show them how to build a liquid lens using a large, shallow bowl of mercury. You teach them how to use the perfect reflection of the liquid metal to find the absolute vertical, the true zenith. You introduce the concept of parallax error. You show them how to take measurements from two different points in the city at the exact same moment to calculate the distance to the moon. You explain that the stars are not just lights on a flat curtain, but points of data in a three-dimensional grid. You are teaching them celestial navigation 1,500 years before the modern era. You are the guardian of the horizon, and as you map the stars, you feel a strange connection to the satellites orbiting the Earth back in 2026. You are looking at the same stars, just from a different seat in the grand theater of time.
The timekeepers. Synchronizing the empire.
Mapping the stars is useless if you cannot measure the time it takes for them to move. The empire runs on water clocks, Gatika, but they are inconsistent. They speed up during the hot afternoons and slow down during the cool monsoon nights because the viscosity of the water changes with the temperature. This is where your biophysics and fluid mechanics background comes in. You introduce the sleeper's constant flow protocol. You show the royal clockmakers how to use a double tank system, using a secondary reservoir to keep the water pressure exactly the same regardless of how full the main tank is. You introduce the concept of thermal compensation. You show them how to use two different types of metal that expand at different rates to keep the clock's mechanical parts steady in the brutal Indian heat. Suddenly, the Gupta Empire is running on a standardized time protocol. Every temple, every market, and every military outpost is synchronized. In the 21st century, we call this network synchronization. In 385 AD, it is a revolution in governance. Taxes are collected on time, royal messengers arrive on a precise schedule, and the entire empire begins to move with a rhythmic, mechanical pulse. You have taken a mystical, spiritual civilization and given it the tick-tock of an industrial machine. You are the master of the second. And as you hear the water clocks dripping in perfect unison across the city, you realize that by giving them time, you have taken away their eternity. You have pushed them one step closer to the modern world. And the shadow of the gnomon is pointing directly at the end of the simulation.
The biological tanks. The war elephant logistics.
The year is 395 AD. The empire is expanding, and you have been called to the front lines. You are standing in the middle of the Gajashala, the royal elephant stables. In front of you are 500 war elephants, the heavy tanks of the ancient world. To the enemy, they are monsters of destruction. To you, the sleeper, they are complex biological systems in need of 21st century maintenance. You see the trainer struggling with must, a period of extreme aggression in male elephants caused by a massive spike in testosterone. In history, this was seen as a divine madness. You activate your biochemical and behavioral protocol. You don't use chains or hooks. You use nutrition and isolation. You show the trainers how to identify the early hormonal signs and how to adjust the elephant's diet to include specific cooling herbs and roots that dampen the chemical spike. You are performing veterinary endocrinology 1,000 years early. But the real challenge is logistics. An army of 500 elephants requires 150 tons of food and 25,000 gallons of water every single day. If the supply chain breaks, the tanks turn into a liability. You introduce the sleeper's calorie chain. You use your 2026 management logic to create a mobile forage system. You show the army how to compress hay and grain into standardized rations that could be carried by smaller pack animals. You design a portable water filtration system using layers of charcoal and sand to ensure the elephants don't die of waterborne parasites. You have turned a chaotic group of animals into a precision military asset. You are the architect of the heavy line. And as the elephants move forward in a synchronized wall of gray muscle, you realize that your medical background has made you the greatest general the Gupta Empire has ever seen.
The asymmetric doctrine. The physics of the bow.
The infantry is equipped with the woods, steel you created, but the long-range battle is fought with the bamboo longbow. You notice that the archers are strong, but they are fighting against the aerodynamics of the humid air. You activate your kinetic energy protocol. You show the bow makers how to recur the ends of the bow using heat and animal glue, creating a composite effect that stores more potential energy. You show the arrow makers how to fletch the arrows with a slight spiral, giving them gyroscopic stability in flight, the same logic used in a modern rifle bullet. Suddenly, the Gupta archers have a range that is 50% greater than their enemies. They are hitting targets before the enemy even knows the battle has begun. You stand on the command hill, looking down at the battlefield. You see your steel, your medicine, your logistics, and your physics all working together. It is no longer a war. It is systemic execution. You feel the sleeper's guilt once again. You want to be a doctor and a scholar, but you have become the engineer of the apocalypse. You have ensured the survival of the golden age, but the cost is written in the efficiency of the deaths you have enabled.
The iron pillar signature. The message in the rust.
The year is 400 AD. The simulation is beginning to flicker. You feel the digital desync in the very air you breathe. The scent of sandalwood is fading, and the sound of the temple bells is becoming distorted, like a low bitrate audio file. You have one final mission. You return to the iron pillar you helped forge years ago. It stands tall, black, and perfectly smooth, defying the monsoon rains. You use a small, ultra-sharp wooden chisel to perform the final act. You don't write in Sanskrit. You use your binary and geometric protocol. On the base of the pillar, hidden beneath the decorative carvings, you etch a series of microscopic dots and lines, a binary code that describes the structure of the atom and the coordinates of stars as they will appear in the year 2026. You are leaving a sleeper's signature in the very fabric of history. You are using the phosphorus passivated iron as your hard drive. You realize that this pillar will stand for 16 centuries, carrying your message through the rise and fall of empires, through the arrival of the British, and through the birth of the modern world. You write one last line in simple, logical symbols. We were never lost. We were just waiting for the signal. You seal the etching with a drop of the insect-resistant ink you created in Nalanda. You are the guardian of the infinite. And as you touch the cold, rust-proof metal, you feel the pulse of the timeline finally stabilizing.
The awakening. The New York sunrise.
The simulation breaks. The orange silks of Pataliputra and the gray muscle of the war elephants dissolve into millions of blue pixels. The heat of the Ganges vanishes, replaced by the cool, filtered air of your studio. You open your eyes. You are sitting in your chair in New York. The city is starting to wake up. You can hear the first distant rumble of the subway and the chirp of a siren. You are Sleep of the Historian once more. You look at your hands. They are no longer stained with the charcoal of the forge. You go to your laptop and immediately search for Iron Pillar Delhi Research. You find an article published just an hour ago, April 1st, 2026. Archaeologists using high-resolution laser scanning have discovered a series of unexplained microscopic pits at the base of the iron pillar. The patterns appear to be non-natural and follow a complex mathematical sequence that researchers are struggling to decode. Your heart stops. The Lotus protocol worked. The bridge you built from 350 AD to 2026 is holding firm. You didn't just study the Gupta Empire. You became its silent architect. You look out your window at the Manhattan skyline, at the steel and glass that you now know will one day rust and fall, while your iron pillar stands silent in the east. You realize that the sleeper is the only one who truly knows how the world was built. You close your eyes, the taste of turmeric and honey still faint on your tongue, and you prepare for the next displacement,